Isn't it time you got to know your technology leaders? You're listening to Off the Record with GTRA, and I'm your host, Kelly Oakham. So grab your coffee or cocktail and join us for our casual yet intimate and thought-provoking expose on our top council members, ambassadors, technology innovators, and thought leaders.
Today, I would like to welcome a very exciting guest, Ashok Sankar, Senior Director of Product Marketing and Evangelist from Raytheon Cyber Products. Welcome, Ashok.
Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Pleasure to have you. We would like to start off by getting to know a little bit more about who you are, your personal story and background.
Sure. I originally come from India, came to the United States to get my higher education in electrical engineering in 1983. And since then, been here. Actually, I've been in this country for more years than have spent time in India. I came here to get my degree in electrical engineering, and then since then, been working in many organizations. Started out as a hardware engineer. My specialization was fiber optics, actually, in college. But then from hardware engineering, I moved on to software. And then what I found very intriguing, if you will, was how do you actually go and satisfy a customer's requirement? How do you actually build software? And, where does this requirement, if you will, come from? And that was a little bit of a intriguing process for me. And that kind of led me down the path of going into product management and product strategy, and then moved on to product marketing. So right now, my focus is evangelism, essentially, getting the word out, if you will, getting visibility and awareness to what we do here at Raytheon Cyber Products. And, so that's been my story.
Well, you certainly have a fascinating history. What do you think drives you, motivates you, and really what catapulted you into jumpstarting your passion for security?
What drives me and motivates me in general is my daughter on anything, but not necessarily from a security perspective. Sometimes, she's 15 years old, and, sometimes the things that she says, lets me pause and say, I can't believe that I'm learning something new or different or getting a different perspective. A perspective, from my daughter, who's so young. Mm-hmm. But from a security perspective, one of the things, I've been in software engineering for quite a while. I've tried, been in very different industries. What I find about security, if you will, is that it is very challenging. And it is about helping people. It seems like it has a purpose associated with it. I used to work for a GIS company, Geospatial Information Systems company, where we did predictive analytics. You kind of take events that have happened in a particular area, over a course of time, and then try to predict when or where this event would happen again. I just found it very intriguing, and the point of the whole thing was that it was really about saving lives, helping people, keeping the bad guys out so we can essentially function as a society normally, whether it's in business or personal lives or whatever it is. And I think that's what essentially inspired me and got me into security, this constant challenge, this that is, ever evolving around security.
Well, I really love how you remind us that the purpose of security is helping people. So many people tend to forget, what's the goal here. So, what do you think are some of the biggest issues and challenges that you're currently facing?
Well, right now, from a security perspective, the threat landscape is very different. It used to be when there were kids in basements, they wanted some accolades or wanted some badges, if you will, among their peers, and they just broke into somebody's computer and, tried to steal something. But I think right now the threats are very different. They're far more advanced, and the actors are very sophisticated and very well-funded. Nation states, cyber criminals, they are the ones who we are facing today. They're just not as well coming from the outside. That's usually been our thinking, threats are coming from the outside the organization. But the problem of this insider threat is growing as well. In fact, I just recently read a survey where 35% of employees admitted that for the right price, they would sell confidential company information. right? So I guess that talks a lot about trust we have placed in them. So this is a new thing that's coming out. A recent survey has also shown that 9 in 10 organizations have been breached at least once, right, where there's been a data theft, some sort of data theft in the last 12 months. So with all this, we have been spending quite a bit on security, but somehow we seem to have not, addressed the challenge, wholeheartedly, if you will, with the new threat landscape. And, so the question is, how did we get here? The new threats, if you will, are essentially turning our security strategies and deployments on their heads. We looked at it and said, hey, we're going to build an enterprise perimeter. That promise seems to have kind of failed, primarily because of mobile, cloud, and social technologies. The traditional security strategy has always been around defense in depth, where you put layers of point products, actually looking outside, looking for external threats, and primed mainly for signature-based detection. I had to know what the threat was going to be. Then I would detect it, then I would stop it, do whatever. And, basically what these things are doing is just sending out massive amounts of alerts of their own. Today, security analysts are drowning in a sea of information and alerts. They don't know where to start. If somebody wants to put together any semblance of a threat, they don't have one place to go. They kind of run between multiple consoles, very disparate product consoles, if you will, depend largely on manual processes to stitch these things together, rely on two-dimensional tables and charts. Process is very, very complex and cumbersome. In fact, research is showing that only 4% of alerts are investigated and 40% of intrusions go undetected. So when you couple this with a skills and resource shortage, experience shortage, and things like that, we have a pretty big challenge on our hands. So much so, what we now say is that, the new thinking, if you will, is around the fact that we're living under the assumption of compromise. We're operating in a conflicted environment. What that means is that if there is a determined adversary, they will get in. Testament to it has been the past couple of years, the high-profile breaches we have heard of, Target, OPM, Anthem, things of that nature. So it's a matter of when and not if. So biggest challenge is how do we operate and be resilient in this environment?
Well, I definitely agree with you, and I know our GTRA government and health tech healthcare communities agree that insider threats are definitely the biggest concern right now. So, what are you and your company working on to meet some of the challenges in cybersecurity today?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, our traditional thinking has been like we'll try to prevent us, everything that is coming in. Obviously, security is not 100%. You can't guarantee anything. While prevention is, ideal, right? That way we can stop things. The next best thing would be to contain and control these threats. The more you can control, the less of the damage and minimal the exposure. That's the idea. So we then say, how do we do that, right? In order to do that, there's a few core elements, that need to be in place. The first thing is to accomplish any objective, to know if we are successful or not, we need to be able to measure our efforts, right? So we need to look at the metrics that tell us if we're meeting our goals and what are the right metrics for the environment we are in and what is relevant, to the efforts. So that's key. If you look at security metrics today, still a lot of them is around being very quantitative, counting alerts, breaches, incidents, vulnerabilities, and things of that nature. That's what we've been using to measure our security efficacy, so to speak. And, that's still the large part. But, in this new environment where we say an intruder is, if he is determined he's going to get in, quantitative metrics don't necessarily mean a whole lot. What is essentially required are qualitative measurements. And a couple of things that, we're promoting in this case, or we're looking for, are dwell time and lateral movement. What they are is dwell time is the amount of time an intruder spends inside your network. And lateral movement is how much has he moved within the environment or your organization in order to, compromise the assets. Obviously, the more time he spends in your network, and the more he moves around, he's able to map a lot of these high-profile assets and things of that nature can cause a lot of damage. So we want to try to control that. The less time we can have him do that, make it benign, if you will, the better it is for us. So how do we achieve that? The first thing is we need end-to-end visibility, and this comes from monitoring endpoints, user activity, very, very important, and other key assets in which real-time data is something that is collected. Each piece of information now fills, it fills a piece of the puzzle, if you will, and creates that whole story around it. So it has to be in place and have access to them from one place without having to run between consoles. That's going to be very, very key. So one of the things that we have to do is when you talk about end-to-end visibility, we have to have access to all of this information from one place so we can avoid running between consoles trying to pull all this information manually together. As you know, a lot of data by itself is not sufficient. I mean, what we need is, something that can bubble up this meaningful information, right? We have all the data we need. Actually, analysts, like I said earlier, are drowning in a sea of information. What we need is the ability to help bubble the important things up, if you will, that need their attention. Out of the 1,000 alerts or 100 alerts that are there, what are the 2 or 3 things I really should be focusing on, right? Analytics plays a very big part in this conversation here, and automation helps in many areas. Automation is fast. It can perform tasks on a predetermined set of rules without making errors. And most importantly, it can scale. So what it allows us to do is plow through mountains of information and reduce the tediousness, if you will, and just help bring out the information that really needs to be looked at. That's the first level. But automation of analytics alone is not sufficient. In certain areas, it's very, very useful, but in some cases, human involvement is very necessary. Cognitive reasoning and high-level analysis to understand and pick out patterns that automation cannot necessarily point out. It's things like asking the what-if questions, answer the questions that will lead us to figure out what is really going on or happened. So what we need is analytics capabilities, both automated and manual, at the right place, and then basically based on, the application and the objectives and the goals that we set out to accomplish there. To derive this real insight and intelligence, we need to really focus, right? So context is going to be important. But combining this data that we've collected with context, you can now filter out a lot of the noise and just bubble up what truly deserves the analyst's attention. Overlaying analytics with contextual intelligence, right? You can now discover patterns, get insights, and most importantly, make confident decisions, right? Context offers enrichment. So the layers that we have is the content of the information layer on top, bubble it up to the analytics layer, and then overlay that with contextual information, and then using a very intuitive user interface, from where you can quickly, bubble up the information that you need to look at, essentially helps people, get to where they need to. And that's what Raytheon is working on right now, what we have to offer.
That's very exciting. I mean, you're definitely one of the leaders in this area, and exciting things to come. So, Raytheon's really been a very popular collaborator with GTRA senior government executives. What are your ideas and vision to work with the GTRA and Government Council?
Well, actually, GTRA, I think, is doing a great job already, bringing people together in forums and conferences, and I think they should continue to do that. You should continue to do that. I think one thing that can be there would be to see what critical problems people are facing. Right, for example, there is not a shortage of issues, challenges people face, and try to bring a nonpartisan, vendor agnostic group, if you will, and deliver solutions, based on and offer guiding principles and things of that nature. I think you've got a very diverse membership, whose expertise that we can really tap into.
Excellent. And what would you say are some of the pressing topics that should be addressed in really pushing the industry forward?
I think one of the things that is very, very important right now, a critical challenge, is the resource shortage we are facing in the cybersecurity space. I think GTRA can really help in that area in the sense that bringing together, for example, awareness to high school and college level students, right? People at that age who are thinking about career choices. It's just not engineering specific, it's a very broad discipline, but cybersecurity very specifically. Bringing speakers. For example, there's a nationwide effort around STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where they have regional and national events just basically to increase the visibility and raise awareness of what is lacking there, what the options are for students and things of that nature. GTRA can definitely, take that up as an initiative to engage kids at the high school and college level to open up their choices in cybersecurity.
Well, I love it. What a great suggestion. I think it's an interesting option for potential internships as well. So thank you for that. And, thank you for joining us today. I really have learned a lot. To learn more about Raytheon cyber products, go to raytheoncyber.com. And for more information on GTRA and the upcoming Secure Gov Council Summit, November 15th through 17th at the Homestead Resort in Virginia, go to gtra.org. Thank you so much for joining us, Ashok.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning in. Please join us for our next council meeting and upcoming podcasts. Go to gtra.org. Again, I'm your host, Kelly Yoakum, and I look forward to your topic ideas, feedback, and suggested podcast participants. So please feel free to reach out to me at kelly@gtra.org.